In this lesson video, we're going to be working with buttons. And there are two different ways I'm going to show you how to handle the click event, or basically the code whenever a button is clicked for a button. Now you do not have to use both methods, but I want to show you both because more than likely when you're reading somebody else's code, you may see that they've chosen one method over the other. And I want to be able to demonstrate both of those for you. So we're going to do that here in this particular lesson. So to begin with, I need to switch over to the activity main.xml file. I'm going to move over two different buttons. Let's go ahead and drag from the palette the first button, and then drag over from the palette the second button. Now on the first button, I want this one to say OK, and it's basically going to be our OK button. So I'm going to right click on this first button. I'm going to choose to edit the ID. Right now it says button 1. I want it to say button OK. And I'll go ahead and hit OK. And then for the second button, I want it to say button close. So I'm going to go ahead and right click, choose edit ID, and we'll change that to say button close. And I'll go ahead and hit OK. And now the text of the buttons also needs to be changed. You can see that it says button currently. If I switched over to the XML file and scroll down to find those two buttons, you can see that I have a couple different attributes for it. I now have the ID attribute that has the names that I just attributed to the buttons. It also has a text attribute which just says button. And I'm going to choose to add different strings for these. So I'm going to switch back over to the graphical layout. And I'm going to go ahead and right click on our first button. And I'm going to choose to edit the text. Now I'll need to create a new string. So I'm going to go ahead and say new string. And let's go ahead and give this string a name. I'm going to go ahead and call it OK underscore button. And then for the string value itself, I'm going to use capital O, capital K. So the string name is all lowercase and it's only one word, OK underscore button. And then the string value is going to be a capital O and a capital K. I'll go ahead and hit OK. And then you'll see that I have the OK button here, and I'll just hit OK. Now for the second button, I wanted to say close. So I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to say edit text. And again, I could hard code it in here, right here in this option if I wanted to, but I want to just be proper and create a string for it. So I'll type in new string, and I'll call this one button close. And then for the value, I want it to be a capital C, and then I'll just do LOSE, and I'll hit OK. And you can see here that it is going to reference the @string, so it's going to be a string that we've just created, and then button close. And I'll go ahead and hit OK. And so those words have been changed. And if I really wanted to see those strings, I could minimize or restore down my activity here, look for the values folder under the resources folder, and double click strings.xml. And you can see now that I do have the OK button and I do have the button close. I'll go ahead and close that file, and I'll maximize my window. Alright, so now we're going to have to enter some code in for this. Now I told you there's two different methods to handling the click event of a button, or basically when the button is clicked, the code that will run. I'm going to show you the first way, which is my preference, by modifying the OK button. So I'm going to go back over to the code, and this first option is to use an XML attribute for our button itself. So I'm going to go ahead and add an attribute, Android, and then there's an onClick attribute that I want, and then I get to pick the name of the method that will handle the event when the button is clicked. And so there is no method currently that exists. I'm going to have to create this in the code. So I'll just go ahead and say OK click. That'll be the name of that method that I'm going to create. Now for the second button, I am not going to use the onClick attribute because I want to be able to show you a different way to handle the button as well. So we're going to switch over to the code now. In fact, before I go over to the code, I'm going to save my file because I want to be able to work with the button OK and button close. If it was not saved, I wouldn't see them whenever I tried to instantiate the buttons over there. So let's go ahead and go back over to the main activity.java file. And for the first button, I told you that I wanted to create a method called OKClick. So what I need to do is create a new method, and it has to be within my activity itself. So you can see that I have an opening curly brace up here. And as I highlighted that, you can see that down here this one got highlighted. That is the opening and closing of our activity. And I need to be within that activity itself, or the class itself. So I need to space that down. I do not want to write code within this particular method. You can see the opening and closing here. and you've got this method here which has an opening and closing curly brace. So I want to have my own, and I'm going to go ahead and write some code here. I'm going to type in public static void and then OK click, and then I'm going to go ahead and put an opening parenthesis and type in view v, and I need to go ahead and create the opening curly brace, and if I hit enter it actually will create the closing curly brace for me. So now I'm going to write in just a quick line comment so that I know what I'm supposed to be doing here in this method. So I'll start that with 2 forward slashes, I'll put a space and then put in there code that executes when button OK is clicked. Okay, and this is where we want to put our code whenever we want this button OK to be clicked. Put a space there, and I'm going to begin writing my line of code here on line 37. Now that will change because I'm going to add some more code up here so that I'll get pushed down a little bit. But this is going to handle the click event for my OK button. Now here's the second option. I actually need to bring the button in to work with from code to do it the second way. So I'll need to come up here to the top. Now let's go ahead and bring over a button. I'll type in button, and then we're going to call this one BT close. I'll end that with a semicolon, and I do need to import that button class, so I'm going to have to hover over button and say import button. Now that I have the button imported, I'm going to come over to my onCreate method just like I did in the last lesson, and we need to link that button to our new object. So I'm going to type in BT close equals, and then button in parentheses, and we're going to use the find view by ID again, and then we're going to use the r.id dot, I'm going to look for that button close, which is right here, and end that with a semicolon. Okay, I'm going to space down a couple here within the onCreate method because I still need to be within this method. And what I want to do is I need to set the onClick listener for this button. So how I do that is I type in BT close, which is the object that I'm working with, dot, and then I'm going to type in set on click, and you can see that there's the onClick listener. I'll go ahead and just double click that. Inside of the parentheses, I need to tell it that I want a new onClick listener, and I'm going to go ahead and put an opening and closing parenthesis in there. I'll put a space, and I need to have an opening curly brace before that closing parenthesis you see there, and I'll hit enter. Okay, a couple things are going to have to happen here. First of all, I'll end this on line 29 now with a semicolon, and then if I hover over onClick listener, you can see that I can import it. So import the onClick listener. I'll go ahead and do that, and then if I hover over it again, it's going to tell me that I have some methods that have not been implemented yet. So it's going to give me the option to add unimplemented methods, which I'm going to go ahead and choose to do that now. And the method that it actually implemented is this onClick method. So what I've done is I've set an onClick listener, or I've basically told my Android system to listen for click events on this object called BT close. And BT close is currently linked to our button close object from our layout. So the Android system is currently listening for a click event. Now the area that I actually will have to write the code to handle when the button is clicked is going to be within this onClick method that we just implemented. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that. The only code that I need for this button to close my application is just the finish, and I'll do opening and closing parentheses and end that method, finish method, and that'll actually close our activity for us to close our application. And the code that I'm going to have for the OK click button will be entered in a different lesson in this particular section. Alright, so that concludes the video for this lesson.